So what we'll do is introduce our evaluation platform, which is an ongoing project. So we're kind of integrating more and more things as we go. But it's important to have a discussion around it and get your feedback, particularly because there's people with different kinds of expertise in the room. So as a recap, an important goal of the project is creating an extensive evaluation benchmark, which includes different kinds of criteria, metrics, novel tasks that can assess large language models in different real-world settings and identify where limitations lie, in particular here in mental health in sort of today's discussion. So there's a big question around what this should look like and how we can make it flexible so that it can be continuously expanded upon, and how we can basically design it with this in mind. So essentially, we want to sort of kind of a real focus of this is that we want to keep in mind like the goal of the user. So what a user aims to achieve through using this technology. And so then this leads to requirements. So what are the essential criteria needed to ensure that the use of the technology has been successful, sort of within the context of the evaluation? And so then how do we, I guess, see concrete implementations of these kind of wider goals and requirements within specific contexts that can be applied and evaluated. So the tasks provide this kind of more concrete operationalization. And aspects within this are distinct dimensions of the technology to be assessed. So for example, robustness, temporal robustness could be a particular aspect. And then we want to look at further going from sort of the more high level goals to kind of more concrete things we can measure. What are kind of quantifiable measures that we can use to evaluate performance, effectiveness, or impact of the technology? So kind of that's like the high level of how we're conceptualizing the evaluation. And so we're thinking about sort of adopting this kind of dual approach. So where we have this sort of more kind of top-down evaluation where we have sort of the particular requirements and sort of kind of very well-defined use cases where someone can go and find sort of the specific, let's say it's sort of a very well-defined dialogue plus use case evaluation scenario. And then this could be used as is. And there can also be this more bottom-up evaluation where essentially elements of these particular use cases can be reused in other people's pipelines. And so we think this is particularly useful for companies who want to sort of develop their own systems and have some of the same aspects and tasks that they may want to incorporate in what they're doing. So so for example, here I've got this just to illustrate this kind of transition of the sort of the goals to the metrics. Maybe your goal is continual high quality monitoring of patients. And so, you know, your requirements are involving patients in their care, cost effectiveness, augmenting clinical capacity, clinician capacity. And then you can zoom into a longitudinal prediction of symptoms or well-being. So quite a lot of the stuff that we've already looked at today has been, for example, identifying changes and sort of the reasons behind these changes. And then there's sort of aspects of this where you want to make sure that, you know, any answers are correct, they're explainable. So if someone says, oh, I've identified a change, if the system says there's a change in this individual or they're having maladaptive or adaptive behavior, you know, explaining why that is, or rather explaining the evidence for that rather than why that is. The sort of, I guess, it being robust in the temporal reasoning that we saw earlier, so understanding the before and after and during and of events, factuality and robustness. So, and then there's sort of more concrete metrics that have been associated with these kinds of things before. So yes, I think I'd like to sort of now show you, I guess, this is my last slide before Jenny comes in. Sebastian comes in, yes, to show the platform in action. So we sort of, the kind of the idea here is sort of you're having like an initial entry to this, like your landing page, and then you have your possibility of exploring particular use cases, and then we'll show you the kind of the ones that we've done so far, display completed evaluations, and so examples of sort of, you know, why a particular model performed better on a particular task. And then also you have kind of the second branch to the right, which is around creating a new task where you could select parts of particular use cases and aspects and essentially build your evaluation. And so that's our vision and sort of what we're developing at the moment. And Sebastian will come next and show you more about sort of the platform in action.
Right. Thank you, Maria. So together with Ashlyn, who can't be here today, unfortunately, she is a professor in clinical psychology. Domenico, pay attention. Ashlyn is a professor in clinical psychology in Nottingham, right? Yes, she works with, but together with her, we came up with a scenario to kind of ground our platform in that we want to use to guide you through what we're trying to achieve. So imagine there is a CTIO, which stands for Chief Technology Innovation Officer. That's her. And she works at an NHS trust where psychologists are already using social media post with the consent of their clients to use them for mental health assessments or just in their practice in general. And the CTIO is concerned in the way that people use these LLMs, and she wants to find out what the best way of using LLMs for this use case is. And she wants to implement a standard operating procedure, which I think is something that means something to people at the NHS. And we were thinking that our platform would be helpful to a person like this, to this CTIO, to assess whether the LLMs that could potentially be used for this task actually do the things that psychologists require for their practice. So the way that we would imagine this happens is that the CTIO, she has identified that there is a use, or like a need for making LLMs safe for mental health use cases. And she liaises with psychologists to find out what their requirements are. And then she could go onto our platform and find a task that is similar, or if it doesn't exist, create a new one. In our case, she would find the timeline summarization task and run the evaluations on a data set that we provide, but with the LLMs that they're using at the NHS, then compare these LLMs and in order to make an informed decision on which one would be the best candidate for their use case, but also what the drawbacks and the potential, what the positives and negatives are about using an LLM like that, and then ultimately define an SOP, define the way, the procedure in which an LLM should be used. And I think Jenny will continue now, talking a little bit more about requirements.
Yes, so mapping this back to the concepts that Maria defined earlier, which are goals, requirements, and more that I will remember as I go through the slides. So in this scenario, we could start breaking down the individual concepts or components to fit into the taxonomy that we talked about earlier. So yes, when we're using AI, let's say for summarizing social media posts, one of the first organizing concepts is, well, what exactly is the summary for? What are they trying to achieve with this technology? So here, as an example, one potential goal would be, okay, they might be summarizing it, social media posts, to efficiently prepare for an upcoming session. So with this goal in mind, what are the requirements that a summary must should, could, and won't do. And so again, with each goal, there could be further requirements that are decomposed or attached to it. So for instance, in this case, we might say that the summary must only include information if it's related to actually the client's care. They must accurately represent information that were from the original post. And relatedly, they must not make up new information that's not supported by the original post. And it must correctly reflect client progression when we're summarizing through the timeline, so on and so forth. So you could start imagining what are the, I guess, things that we would want out of a system performing this task for us. In addition to the must requirements, there could also be other preferences or nice to haves. So for instance, we might a particular clinician might prefer to have summaries that are written in more concise prose rather than being having too much detail so that it's quicker for them to review. So in this case, this is not a universally shared preference. It might be shared by a lot of people, but it's not a must, a defining attribute of the system. And some might maybe we won't require the system to contain live information about the client because there's sort of agreements in place based on what they consented to sharing and what they haven't shared. And so now within each requirement, there's this concept of aspects, so criteria or dimensions on which we would assess whether these requirements are met. So for instance, this first requirement about only including information if it is relevant to the client's care would relate to privacy. So just going off on the list, the second point relates to having meaning preservation. Then also the requirement about reflecting client progression would relate to temporal reasoning, so on and so forth. And importantly, also the multiple requirements might be related to the same aspect. So in this case, there are different requirements that relate to the aspect of factual consistency, which can be measured from an NLP angle with metrics such as ones that appeared in previous presentation today and some that Sebastian will show on the evaluation platform. And so in short, this taxonomy of different concepts, it's often a many-to-many mapping. So different metrics can measure related things that tie into different requirements and goals. And the evaluation platform is an effort to organize this and present it in a way that's easily digestible. Yep.
So let me take this over here. Oop. This is what the platform, this is again, a very early demo, but our idea is that you can, let's imagine you're the CTIO and you want to see the kind of use cases that already exist. You could browse our platform and find the social media threads task. And you will be led to this dashboard where 2 models have been evaluated on the Reddit dataset. And so what we have generated some summaries with Llama, and then we generated models with what I call generic base. Essentially, we made purposefully not so good summaries to emphasize how our system works, how our metrics work. And I want to focus on factual consistency. So you can see how overall Llama performs better than this generic base model. And if you're curious about what these metrics mean, because that's the problem, right? Like you see some values, but what does that really mean? And even if you look at these definitions, you just get assigned one value. And we thought about how can you give people a deeper understanding of what is going on. So you can explore for factual consistency, individual evaluations. The way that we calculated factual consistency here is that we have a transcription by humans, which we call gold. And then we have the summary, not a transcription, a summary by humans. And we have a transcription that's generated by AI. And the underlying thing here means the more green it is, the more bright green it is, the higher it scores in factual consistency. So you see this one is pretty good. This last sentence is kind of good, but it's not as great. And something you can see is that here it says the maladaptive states have been persistent over time. But if you go through this summary, it suggests that there have been adaptive periods. So what our system captures a little bit is that the human annotators thought that there was more adaptive information in these posts, and the LLM suggests more, but it has been maladaptive throughout. But overall, this summary says it's pretty good. It's very good. It's very close to what human annotators say. If, for example, we look at a really bad example here, you see the first sentence underlined in red is, so it means it's not factually consistent with what our gold summary says. And here it says the individual self states are very consistent, in particular the timeline is dominant by maladaptive voices and so on. And here it says, although the presence of maladaptive self states in the post changed quite a bit. So it says the exact opposite, right? So you get an intuitive understanding also with the sentence here. What it means that something is factually consistent and when it isn't. And the great thing is that we can calculate that on sentence level. So we can't, not only can we give you a score for a specific summary, we can even tell you which sentences within that summary are actually particularly bad or particularly good. So our idea is that the IT professional who uses this tool then gets an understanding of when something is bad, what does it look like when it's bad, and where exactly in the summary is it bad, and can make a more informed decision about, is that acceptable or is that not acceptable? And for future work, yeah, I mean, we're working on implementing this for all the metrics and have multiple data sets available. So you can really explore this evaluation in depth in this very nice and neat interface. Many more models and tasks in future if we have funding. Yeah, but that's the idea. And please come and speak to us if you think this is interesting, if you have input, but also we have the workshop now, right?
Yes. So I will present a bit more.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, no worries.
Back to Jenny. Yes.
So now I will be talking about the same example, but using that as a way to segue into our actual workshop activity, which involves identifying requirements using Miro boards.
You can't find the slides.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah.
No, it's already shared. We just need to make it full screen.
Yeah, or I could just go to
I think it's on the other screen. It's for some reason it's yes. Right.
Okay. Would you like to?
I don't like this.
Okay, so back to the same example, but just tying it into the breakout activity. So as described before, there could be different goals for a particular use case, and within each goal, there could be requirements. There could be many requirements that are tied to, that are, that are associated with it. So for instance, the first 4 points refer to the must requirements. In the activity that we're doing in the workshop, what we'll do is split into different breakout groups. Then we'll start going through a board with different goals associated for a particular use case. So here, let's say as a group, we decide that, okay, these are the must requirements. This is what a AI system must do or must have. So in this case, we would then, on the yellow Post-its, write down, these are the must requirements. Then going on, there are requirements that, or things that the AI system should have or should do. So then correspondingly, they will go into the should have section with the purple Post-its. Same for could haves, and same for won't haves. So here the facilitators would also just guide you through what the board is like, how to use it, as well as, if there are any additional things that come up during the discussion with your group, I will also try to capture them and include them in the board where appropriate.